no one should be sick because they're poor, but also no one should be poor because they're sick.
Hey friends, Jeff here with a new episode of Conversations Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. Today we welcome to the show Steve Reed. Steve is a co-founder and CEO at HDT Bio. HDT is a biopharma company that's addressing the urgent need to create cost-effective vaccines to prevent infectious disease all across the globe. They have a powerful mission, and Steve is such a unique guy. Who Steve is to me is mission, or another word, impact. Everything that Steve does, he's thinking about the impact, not just here in the United States or Europe, but in the far reaches of the world, South America, Asia, Africa. And the impact of what he and his team are doing is going to have on those geographies and the communities they're in. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Steve Reed. Steve Reed, welcome to the show. I've been really excited for this conversation. I believe in what you're up to at HDT. And so first, just a hearty welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Steve, you heard me do a brief introduction of you and who you are to me. Would love for you to share in your own words what you're up to in the world.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. HDT was founded about 3 years ago to improve vaccines and immunotherapeutic solutions with the goal of having these solutions be accessible globally and practical in many ways, emphasizing safety, but also aspects that make them available to various populations, not just the big markets from pharmaceutical companies' point of view. And it builds on HTT's technology platform, build on our several decades of experience working with making vaccines safer, better, more potent. We've learned a lot in the past decades, mostly around the adjuvant field. Adjuvants are molecules or formulations that enhance vaccine potency. Those efforts have led us to form a couple of companies that were actually acquired by big pharmaceutical interests. But now we are seeing with new nucleic acid technology a different way to do things that may be less expensive, more potent, and more practical in many cases, but also enabling. So that's why we are in now the nucleic acid business, which means RNA and DNA, both. How to deliver those as vaccines to save on manufacturing costs, to enhance safety, to enhance rapid response in terms of biodefense, and to enable personalized solutions for oncology applications. So I'd say HDT Bio in a nutshell. We got about 40 scientists here in Seattle, and it's the best team I've ever worked with. Everybody has got many, many years of academic and company experience. So it's really a pleasure to be able to do this at my time in life.
And you pointed to just there in the last phrase, this time of your life. I'm curious, what is different today than it was 25 years ago? What is it for you today what's different? Because you've been doing this a long time.
There's a lot of things that are different. I think one thing that's not different is the emphasis on scientific excellence and the importance and power of academic research and collaborations and internal efforts that we have in the company for basic science. One thing that's not different is the necessity of honest basic science so that we can develop and design new therapeutics based on new knowledge. What is different in the world is a couple of things. When I started this, we were funded largely by the National Institutes of Health, still are. Wonderful organization, the best in the world, the only organization of its kind in the world that allows such support of scientific discovery and translation into products. But now, after 9/11, we've got a huge biodefense industry as well. And some of that comes from the same budget as the National Institute of Health. So there's been great support by the government to both of those agencies. But there's a lot more effort now on rapid response technologies. So that's huge. We never worried about that before. We worried about new developments, but now it's rapid response. How fast can you get that vaccine made and distributed? So that encompasses not only basic science, but also logistics, as you might imagine. Another thing that's different is conglomeration of biotech pharma companies. There were more a few years ago than there are now through acquisitions of different companies. I don't think that's a good trend. It limits the opportunities for work to get done in different biotech companies. It also globally, these large pharma companies don't emphasize a lot of markets in the world that comprise most of the population. So we like to say, somebody asked me in the meeting last week in Santa Clara, why are you doing this? Well, there's big RNA companies out there already working. I said, well, it's a big world, and we are developing technologies that address very important markets, not just from a commercial standpoint, but from a humanitarian standpoint. So South America, for example, Southeast Asia, Africa, et cetera.
And how are you different personally? So the industry has changed, and you pointed to a few of those factors. How have you personally changed from when you did this? Again, I'm just picking 25 years. You could pick whatever amount of time, but how are you different this time?
Well, Jeff, I lived and worked in Brazil for 5 years, and was happy to be a member of the Cornell University team that ran a global health organization that was, worldwide: Haiti, Brazil, Africa, Southeast Asia. Cornell experience is fantastic for me. What a wonderful group of professors led by Warren Johnson, who's still there. What I learned is we're not just down there to say we're working on some exotic parasite that sounds very interesting. Well, that's exciting. No, we're there to actually make a difference. If we don't leave the project or the country in better shape than we found it, then I think we failed. I come from an agricultural background, a poor farm where, we were self-reliant, and we try to, in my efforts, we try to actually make a difference. So we were able to introduce new diagnostics, develop new vaccines, and that's still what's going on. I think how I've changed is, one example is our effort in tuberculosis vaccine. Tuberculosis is still the major cause of infectious disease deaths in the world, single cause. And many evaluations have been done, especially since COVID, looking at the amount of money that was spent on COVID. And if that effort had been applied to TB, we would have at least one, maybe two, maybe three vaccines by now, because this TB isn't going away. COVID has, more or less. So what's the difference? Well, it's not a big market. It's not commercially attractive. We developed a wonderful approach with GSK, a major pharma company. Vaccine was pretty good. It did a lot of good, actually. It saved about half the people from developing disease, which if you keep applying that year after year, will accumulate to a point of eliminating a lot of tuberculosis, not all. But we weren't thinking carefully about some of the practical aspects at the time. Big Pharma thinks about serving commercial markets in U.S. and Europe primarily. TB is not a market in U.S. and Europe. So we weren't thinking about, okay, what cost can sustain this vaccine? What cost can make it attractive to be purchased by local governments in endemic countries, or by Gavi, for example, global access to vaccines. So, yeah, changed a lot in terms of thinking. Not only is the science critical, but practical aspects. Don't take shortcuts. Those practical aspects can't compromise in any way the science, but they have to be considered. One of the things I like to say when I give a talk on leprosy is no more leftovers for leprosy patients, because largely we've been trying outdated vaccine technologies on people that have leprosy or are at risk to get leprosy. No, we need state-of-the-art technologies. And what I've learned a lot is, how do you get those state-of-the-art technologies to be picked up and be of interest to a pharma company? So I think what I've learned, Jeff, is don't rely on big pharma. We don't need to. Take your vaccines forward in different ways. The regulatory agencies will support you, the FDA, et cetera, and focus on helping countries that have these problems using their local resources to take the place of pharma. And that's happening. That's happening all over the world.
Yeah. And you used the word before we hopped on here or started recording, this mission orientation. In everything you've just shared, it speaks to impact. It speaks to mission. And that's, again, a lot of people talk about mission. They put nice words on websites and maybe in all hands meetings talk about mission and the patient. But in reality, it's not the actual driver. How have you found working with teams? You said your team at HDT is one of the best that you've ever worked with. How do you operationalize mission day in, day out? How do you operationalize that?
Well, in two ways, really, at least two ways. A lot of young people in the company, I guess compared to me, almost everybody is, but a lot of young people, and you know, they have to make a living. They want job security. That's not easy in Seattle with all the prices we have, and similar to many other cities in the country. But, you know, we have to give them a degree of job security. But we also have to make them excited about the kind of work they're doing. And that comes really around in two ways. One is the technology itself. Oh, scientists, technicians, assistants, everyone likes to be involved in something new, right? New and different, but not just for the newness sake, of course. We also talk about why we're doing it. And it's not just for global health or underserved populations or developing world. You know, the motto that I love and I've used, said before, I borrowed from White Coat Rebels, is no one should be sick because they're poor, but also no one should be poor because they're sick. And I think our current oncology solutions often drive people to lose their financial security. And everybody's here excited about that as well, helping people in all walks of life. But when we talk about doing work that contributes to a certain niche vaccine, for example, helping patients in South America or Africa, I think that especially excites people because It's something not everyone else is doing.
Mm.
And we often bring collaborators here from other countries to give talks and present seminars, etc. So it's basically, in a nutshell, it's paying people to do interesting work that's worth doing.
Mm. Do you think there's a hunger in the world? And the world is a big place, so I recognize. Do you think there's generally a hunger in people for impact and to do good? In your view, as you sort of assess working with people, larger communities, do you think that's a core driver?
Certainly not in everyone, Jeff, but I'm so excited about the type of people that seek out working here because on our website we do emphasize mission, and that's one of the things that makes this team so good to work with. People are motivated. But no, you're correct. I mean, as people are successful in their careers, you're getting into the twilight years, and people are thinking, what can I really do now? And you see that all the time. Medical schools, finance named after rich donors. There are several impact investors, and we talk to them. They don't look for the 10, 20, 30x return necessarily. They look for maybe not throwing their money away by any means, but having it make a difference and making a difference relatively soon. Mm-hmm. So impact investment, I think, is growing. And I will say, these are somewhat turbulent times in the U.S., but this is the only place in the world where I see such a large number of kind investors, not only impact investors, but philanthropic investors or donors. We should be proud of that.
What are those conversations like with that type of investor? How are you engaging with them? What are the conversations that you're having around impact?
Yeah, a couple of different ways. For example, we are very excited about a project that is specifically aimed to prevent brain tumors in women with breast cancer, because the current therapies, largely monoclonal antibodies like Herceptin, address the tumor in some ways, but they don't prevent it necessarily from appearing later in the brain. So we talk about how our technology can do that and how fast it could do that, and how they may be able to help us. Same thing in glioblastoma and other brain cancers. I mean, this is a horrible disease. We're just now starting to understand why it's so bad and why it's been so hard to treat. And with the immuno-oncology approaches today, there's no reason why it has to be left alone. So we say, okay, there's only 30,000 cases in the country a year, perhaps. Maybe it's not the most attractive target for big pharma. But with the technology we have today, somebody can and should do something about it, and your contribution can help. So sometimes it's about personal experiences they've had in these types of diseases. But the other is, hey, we have a vaccine against leprosy that could be used to wipe out this disease in our lifetime quite easily. The American Leprosy Foundation has been giving this message for years. They focus mainly on treatment, but with the new diagnostic and therapeutic tools, it's just simply a matter of getting them out there. And I'm not talking about $1 billion launch either. As the most vaccines would cost. I'm talking something a tenth of that. So do you want to make an impact? Do you want to make a difference? Do you want to change the world? This is a biblical disease. Why do we still have it? We don't need to, tiptoe around it anymore because all the tools are there. Some people think that's something they'd like to leave as a legacy.
Yeah. What I'm getting, Steve, is you're creating this environment, and whether they're an investor, an employee, a donor, an interested party, whoever it is, but you're creating this space where people can be a part of something that's different. Because the normal, I'll call it the normal narrative around drug development is make as much money as you can. It's about a big exit at some point, especially when you're dealing with smaller biotech, drug development. They are thinking about impact, but they're thinking about an exit. They're thinking about a payday. And you're creating an environment where, of course, you want to make money, but you're also creating a place where people can plug in and do something that matters. It's a very unique, at least in my travels in this space, it's a very unique space that you're creating, that where people can be a part of that.
I hope so, Jeff. And you asked before about what I learned. One thing I learned is I firmly believe in capitalism. And I, like many other scientists in this country, have worked with the National Institute of Health for years on global health things, parasites, tropical diseases, and we've all loved it. It's passionate. But if you don't consider how any solutions you develop are going to be taken up locally from the very beginning, you're just performing an academic exercise that is not going to help anyone. So you've got to have practical issues addressed very early. Is this going to be taken up by the local health authorities? And for that reason, we like to work in countries that need these solutions. That's very challenging, right? But China, Africa, South America, India, they all want local products. They don't want to keep importing drugs from around the world and blowing up their budget. Brazil especially, they've got a huge budget for public health, wonderful system. But their emphasis now is making and buying locally. So we have to help them do that. And that's something that's often not thought of as practical or even possible, but you just do it. Can't stay home all the time.
Yeah, there's and maybe this is hyperbole, but I'm thinking about this. I have a guest, upcoming guest on the show, where he's on a mission to make the impossible possible, and he's doing it in a number of different ways. But it feels like in some ways that's also what you're up to, is you're making what maybe somebody would say, well, that's either impossible or unnecessary or not feasible, but you're turning that into possibility for people, for communities, for countries, for diseases that might have been put on the back burner. It feels like that's also part of what you're up to, is changing people's minds on what was impossible and making it possible. Does that resonate?
Yeah, well put, Jeff. Yeah, well put. I hope very much that's what we're doing, and with a variety of approaches. So I absolutely agree. And nothing is really impossible if you want to get it done. Nothing, at least in my world of practical solutions for medical devices, medical interventions, etc. It's just a matter of having the will to do it and making it, and I guess developing a path to make it feasible. So it can't be just scientifically important; it has to be practical as well, and that's where the challenge is. But we're getting there.
Yeah.
I will say that we have a wonderful relationship with the National Cancer Institute in the U.S., and they have their own mission of global health. If you look at the website and the Prevent program, they've got several global health people there. I mean, when we think about developing world problems, we think about malaria, we think about parasitic diseases. Well, come on. They all have cancer too. And, if you're thinking about CAR T cells, which is maybe a $500,000 therapy, or monoclonal antibodies, they're not going to have them. So do we need those technologies, or can we go around them and figure out other ways? Of course, it's not as simple as just having the solution. They've got to have oncologists in place in these places. But as we have more and more tools and we have more and more solutions, maybe the people that are trained in oncology won't be leaving to get out of their country to go get training elsewhere or to get careers elsewhere. They'll stay and build something. So we have to show that we're willing to transfer technology and help bring cutting-edge solutions to the world. Not every company wants to do that because they'll lose control. But, you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve, maybe we've been doing this the whole time, but I just want to state the name of the show. Conversations life science leaders aren't having or not having enough of. When you hear me say that phrase, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
First thing that comes to my mind is life science leaders are primarily on a trajectory to start a company, build a company, flip a company, exit. Conversation I'm not having is, well, how can I really make a difference around the world? Maybe they don't care, or maybe it's just they don't have enough time. Maybe they don't have investor support to do that. Maybe we're in a unique space because when we work with government agencies like BARDA or DARPA, everybody realizes that pandemic avoidance or control is not a local issue only, right? They don't start here. They start anywhere and often start in Asia. So we have to have global efforts and we have to have global vision. But I don't think they're having the conversation unless there's big money behind it. And I don't blame them. A lot of times your investors will say, what? I'm giving you this money to make me some money and I want it fast. And, so what we've done is take a much different approach at HDT Bio. Is try to minimize the necessity for investors that are only interested in flipping the company, selling it, and being very selectful. We have a wonderful group of angel investors, and they are, I think, very comforted in knowing that our technology is attractive to funders. So every dollar they put in, we get about $6 from grants and contracts. So we're standing on our own 2 feet without relying heavily on VC. When you rely heavily on venture capital, you're going to have the conversation they want to have.
You, because of your track record and who you are, Steve, you're in a seat of, I'm going to call it mentorship, to be a mentor. So if you were to have a conversation with a CEO and to give him some advice, some experience on having the conversation, the one that you just said they're not having enough of impact, global impact. If you're talking to a new CEO in this space, what's the conversation that you're having with her or him?
In this space?
In the biotech, drug development space, and they, they come to you and said, Steve, I heard you on that show and talking about impact and talking about global impact and the challenges there. Share some advice. How can I start engaging where I am in the conversation that you're inviting me to have?
Well, I think depend a lot on, of course, their technology, their mindset, and their mission. But as I said to one of the answer to one of the questions last week in Santa Clara, why are you doing this? I said, well, it's a big world out there. People don't realize, for example, that Brazil is the number 5 biotech market or bio market in the world, you can make a lot of money by servicing markets outside of the U.S. I think my advice would be to be sure that you keep a focus on what you're good at and making it, not getting it tied up too much with just one big company so that others don't get access to it. Because if it's really good technology, you want it to be accessible. That's not always easy. Obviously, there's trust issues. But if you do multiple deals so that you get multiple markets opened up, to me, that makes a lot of sense. It also keeps the big company on their toes to some degree, right? Keeps them honest. So I just say have a broad approach, have a broad vision, and keep your options open as much as possible. My advice, frankly, it's a tough one, but minimize the amount of control that others have over your company.
Right.
Does that allow you to do what you want and do it what you want longer?
Yeah. It's a big conversation with this fictional CEO, who you're having this conversation with, but they're real. I just put myself in their shoes. Oh, it's overwhelming. There's so many players. There's so many voices, so much pressure. And, it could feel overwhelming. But in the spirit of that, what's the first step in them doing that?
Yeah, the first step is focusing on a platform or product that big pharma wants, for example, and try to do a deal, to do a license deal that's limited but very, very substantial. For example, your company may have 3 technologies that they're working on or 4 different products they're working on. License one of them and get some non-dilutive revenue, i.e., you're not giving up a lot of shares. You're giving up a license to that technology, but maintaining the ability to develop other things and do your own thing. Much better, I think, than having venture capitalists control the whole company and every aspect of it. So getting this non-dilutive money or license fee money is really helpful. Secondly, although I've had arguments with investors in the past and other companies, your scientists often like to have accomplishments that are not so easy sometimes in a company, that is publications and grants. I always told my scientists, when you leave this company, you've got a resume, right? And you don't want that resume to just say, I was at this company and I led a team that did this. That's nice. But I encourage them to write grants, bring in more non-dilutive money, and that increases their status in the academic world or the scientific community, as well as brings in money to the company for projects that you're working on. Again, the government has been very, very supportive, and they've set up this small business mechanism. It was mandated many years ago that that portion of the budget would be dedicated to companies that what wanted to get started in the U.S., and therefore it's a way to build industry in this country. It's been very, very successful. So my advice is don't just sit around and let your investors do all the lifting, bring in some money yourself, because it'll get you through tough times. A few years ago, we saw a lot of investments get out there that now the companies are completely dependent on the investors, and they're going back. They're going under because there's cycles in this business.
Yeah,
having your own revenues can help you weather those cycles.
Mm. Mm.
That's my advice.
Yeah. And bring us back into the halls of the company of HDT Bio. How are you helping your people connect to the why? Because you're really speaking to that, whether it be this mentorship type conversation with impact investors. You spoke a little bit about the desire of your people around that as well, around impact. What's the day-to-day type conversation to help reconnect people to the why?
When you have a small group like we do, it's not hard. Everybody's together in a small facility, and so we have scientific updates every Monday. We have group meetings on Thursdays. So you circulate, hey, what's new in this particular group? What's new by that particular group? Who's presenting what, where? What kind of reception did we get at the last meeting? Who did we meet? Hey, did somebody from NCI, National Cancer, seek us out and ask if they could collaborate with us? Wow, what do they want to do? I bring in outside talks to, our clinical investigators. What young scientists like to see, and not everybody, I think, but the ones that come here, they're motivated. They're actually something that can lead to a product, something that you'll put in a bottle eventually, and something that actually help people, not just another mouse experiment,
Yeah.
So that's how we do it. What do you do? Why are we doing this? Who's interested? Is it the federal government? Is it a company? But it's always the patient. It's always the patient. They're always going to be the one interested.
Yeah.
And is it going to be the patient that lives only in North America? Or is it going to be patients worldwide?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. I'm just really, yeah. I love this, and I love what you're creating. Well, last question, Steve, and again, maybe it comes from something you've already said, but if you could seed in the minds of all these life science CEOs one conversation that they're going to have over the next week, what's that one conversation that you would love for all of them to have?
I think it touches on many of the things that I believe need to be changed. But largely it's build as much self-reliance as you can and think about making a difference globally, not just locally, making money, but do it in a way that helps a lot of people. We see over and over that a healthy population is a more peaceful, is a more stable one in terms of numbers, in terms of everything else. A lot of the frustration, I think, in the world is because, and I've lived there, I know, certain things just aren't available, okay? And they should be, because the internet opens it up and everybody knows what the rest of the world is doing now. They didn't when I was young, but they do. So I guess goes back to our previous conversation, Jeff. Make an impact, and make an impact globally if you can, and have that conversation on how to work together to do that.
I love it. I'd love to be a fly on that wall when if they were to have that conversation. Steve, I would love for you to share anything you'd like that you want to highlight about HDT Bio. And also, if people want to know more, where can they find you?
Yeah, great. I think the website's always evolving, and it's pretty good. HDT .bio. We're not .com. A lot of people get confused about that, but it's a pretty robust site. HDT, again, using the host immune response to harness, and we were maybe a little prescient about this because we named the company, before the RNA vaccine really took off with COVID. Well, that's what that is doing, right? You're introducing the message for a protein in your your cells are making the vaccine internally. So that's host-directed therapy in a way. The host is actually doing the work. You don't have a big factory built in it. You've got this person's own cells. Look, what we're doing here is simplifying the ways to make nucleic acids more effective. How do you do that? It's not just the biology, but it's the stability. Do they need to be frozen at ultra low temperatures? No. Can they be dried and shipped anywhere? Yes. Can they be delivered on a patch without having to use a needle? These kind of things. That's what HDT does. Again, it's all not only related to global health. It's all directed at making something more practical, more usable, and really safer. We have safety issues with the current RNA technology. I don't want those issues to put RNA into question in the public's mind, because it can do that. We rushed into the RNA field with COVID. It was a good thing because we saved a lot of people. It was a good thing. But now we have to step back and say, okay, how can we do things a little bit better? And we firmly believe that we should be able to do that, and we are doing that. Secondly, in oncology, the host can actually mount a response to tumors to keep them from coming back. We know that because the so-called checkpoint molecules basically unleash your immune system. They reduce the suppression, so to speak. So it unleashes your cells to kill tumors. So even though that's a blockbuster industry, billions of dollars, they only work in a fraction of the tumor. So we need to expand that. If you're unleashing the immune system, why not combine that with something that boosts it as well? And we saw good news from Moderna and Merck in a melanoma clinical study showing that could actually work. And this will be controversial, but boy, it was a great topic at the meeting last week in Santa Clara, the World Vaccine Congress. Someday, cancer vaccines will be a household word. You will have painless and low-cost screening to detect early risk for cancer, and then safe and effective vaccines that prevent cancer in the first place. We heard a very nice talk in Santa Clara from a company in Arizona called Calviri, already doing this in dogs. Healthy dogs brought in. The Calviri scientists put together a cocktail of vaccine components that have prevented these dogs from getting cancer, because dogs have a high cancer rate risk in their life, 20% or something. So they have already shown it can be done. Now let's see if we can translate that into humans.
Yeah.
It will happen.
Yeah. It's awesome. Steve, we'll put HDT.bio and in the show notes, and
Great.
We'll put your LinkedIn profile there so people can find you. Just a huge thanks. This is a one-of-a-kind conversation. I talk to a lot of CEOs, but this has a really unique and a beautiful theme to it. So I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Hey, appreciate your interest and your kind words. Thank you, Scott. Here's Jeff. Appreciate it.